the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move right into Mr. Brooks' superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Hopefully, at some point in time, we will turn from winter to spring. I know the calendar doesn't quite say spring yet. Neither does the climate. And hopefully, we'll also end up with a full week of school one of these days, too. February has been definitely a challenge when it comes to consistency for our children and our programs, so we're hoping that March is a better month, although the beginning has not proven it. Again, tonight, two very important presentations. The first one is going to be on our development process for the 1920 school budget. So thank you for coming out if you're here for that. And we also have a second presentation for Vision 2020, an ambitious review of our facilities and their condition, and plans and proposals for this Board of Education to consider whether or not they would like to put to the community a project for approval. And we will spend a considerable amount of time reviewing that tonight, and I encourage you to stay for all of that and participate, watch, and listen in that conversation. Also on tonight's agenda, the board will be adopting the 2019-2020 student calendar. So I know that many people anticipate the outcome of that calendar so they can begin making their plans for next school year. So that will be voted on tonight. And a wonderful announcement, if you've been following us for the last several years, which is unfortunate several years, but the Smart Schools Bond Act, which was voted on in New York State many years ago, the district started the approval process at least 3 or 4 years ago in heaviest form in the last 2 years. We finally were notified that we were approved. So our Smart Schools Bond Act, to the tune of $1.2 million worth of technology upgrades, were approved. So we have a lot coming from Marlboro when it comes to technology. We already have a lot. We already have great programs. We already have great tools for our children. We're investing, because of New York State, an additional $1.2 million. So that's fantastic news, and I commend Mike Lucasius and the team that worked with Mike to get that through and approved, and we're ready to move on upward. So thank you very much, Mike, and congratulations. And with that, I am done.
John, want to go through Ulster? Okay, and they haven't had an Ulster meeting since the last one, so we'll move right into our student representatives report.
Good evening. I'd just like to say that I'm looking forward to tonight's presentation on the elementary school. I haven't been here in a while, so I'm looking forward to the new changes. I believe that this presentation is the future of our district, so I look forward to the changes.
Move right into the budget presentation.
Mr. Lucasius, can you copy that up for us, please?
Good evening. So we're going to continue to refine our budget numbers. This will ultimately come into a package that the board will vote on. So we did finalize our tax cap calculation with the comptroller's office. Right now we see an increase of 2.61%, about $907,000 in levy increase from last year to this year. So right now we're looking at what a rollover budget looks like, which is essentially taking everything that occurs June 30th, 2019, and starting it up again July 1st, 2019 for the 1920 school year. So right now we estimate about $475,000 increase in salaries, payroll, and FICA and taxes. Health insurance, about $160 increase. We expected about $100,000 decrease in ERS, TRS expenses due to a reduction in the employer contribution rate. That's a rate that actuaries set based on investment returns throughout New York State. And the state basically dictates to all the public employers what their contributions are, what the contribution rate's going to be for their employees. So we are expecting some savings from that this year. Transportation, we expect a mild $5,000 increase. We've really been working diligently through transportation to try and consolidate services, to reduce runs. This is the second year in a row where we're really seeing pretty much almost static expense expectations based on the transportation. BOE services, which is about a $5 million overall expenditure. We anticipate about $390,000 increase. And right now with debt service, we're continuing to see some benefit from the refinancing we did a couple of years ago. We expect about a $40,000 decrease in debt service expense. It's a little bit small for you in the audience. We'll put this up on the website if anyone wants to take a more detailed look. This is a general breakdown compared to the current year budget to the rollover budget for both expenditures and revenues. So right now we're anticipating a 1.62% increase in the budget as a rollover from this year to next. This is a three-part budget comparison. We are legally required to present the budget in this format to you. This is just, obviously not the final yet, but just an update of where we are with our updated numbers. Again, with the expectation of about $920,000 overall. Variables and options going forward. As the clerks pointed out, we have the approval of the Smarter Schools Bond Act, which is great. We've got a lot of work planned to do with that money. We're still waiting on the final state aid amounts. The numbers presented today are based off of the governor's proposal. Usually when we get the legislative proposal and then the ultimate final aid estimated numbers, they're usually a little bit better than what the governor's proposal does. And then retirements and breakage. Anytime we have somebody who retires, who's a long-term employee, we hire a new employee, the difference between salary and longevity that the long-term employee makes versus what a new employee starts at, it's called breakage. It usually provides a little bit of relief salary-wise. So that still remains. We still, could receive retirement letters up until the end of the year. So program considerations for 1920. Let Mr. Brooks speak to this.
So at our last meeting, because we're combining our efforts in our presentations with our regular operating budget and what we're proposing for discussion purposes with Vision 2020, we want to be as cautious as possible that we not expand our budget-to-budget increase more than the minimum. So determining what that minimum is part of the public debate here. So in discussion last meeting, there was a request to add some things to the list of discussion items, which we did. So the first several, the .2 speech is really based on a Committee on Special Education need, and also it's convenient because currently we have a .8 speech teacher. So adding the .2 on as a simple add for us within the budget, it means a $10,000 increase. We don't need to go out and find an employee for that. The .2 social studies, we have a .8 social studies teacher right now. There's been a considerable amount of polling done with our students, with the high school staff to find out an additional course that we can add to our offerings, or a repertoire of offerings that can be offered in any given year. And Mr. Lawler has landed on sports and entertainment marketing, and that is a proposal that we have. That certainly can be part of the discussion tonight as well, at a $10,000 cost. We're also trying to expand some foreign language or some world language offerings for our children. Right now, we only offer Spanish in grades 7 through 12. Mandarin Chinese is a language option that is available in a very unique way. It's a distance learning opportunity where the teacher actually is shared amongst multiple school districts, and we would purchase the equipment and also the service through BOCES for that distance learning experience. It would begin in the middle school, in 6th, 7th, most likely in 7th grade, and then if the program continues to grow, it would grow grade level by grade level from the middle school up to the high school, and can be the world language option for a graduation credential. So that's also something we're putting on the table as a proposal, and that cost for that for the first year for one section is $40,000. If we were to add on additional sections beyond that, it's not $40,000 per section. There's a lot of startup costs when you first started. So the additional section that we would add going down the line would be somewhere in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. And we are pretty certain that that's an aidable contribution through BOCES that we get aid back onto. We also have been encouraging more and more club activities for our children after school, and as we encourage those activities, we then see the children participate. And when we see children participating, we like to be able to fund those activities to continue. The way that our teacher's contract works, the first year that a club operates, an approved club operates, it operates with no stipend, so there's no cost to it. If we find that there's enough interest and children are participating in that experience, we then would like to continue it on to year 2, 3, and so on. So this allows us to fund new clubs that we're adding in for opportunities for kids. And quite honestly, for the middle school and high school, these are areas that children can explore interests, develop interests, and learn some things about areas that they were completely unfamiliar with, and build resume. The next set of positions really came from some prior dialogue last time with the Board of Education, and also some internal dialogue with our food service and our facilities and operations group. So the technology education teacher is proposed to be a shared position between the middle school and high school, and when the questions arise, the middle school, high school principal are prepared to discuss exactly what that would be within their master schedule and the programming that will be offered for it. That is a full-time position, at least as I costed it out there, at $100,000 in that salary and all the ancillary benefits that go along with it. Point 4, physical education teacher. Right now, we are a little bit short in the elementary school as our required physical education hours. One way to fulfill that requirement is to structure lunchtime with a certified physical education teacher where we can have structured activities for the children. So the point 4 physical education teacher would help to fulfill that requirement. So that is a proposal up for discussion. The next two, really, the food service one at $14,000. Currently, we have 3 employees that are listed as permanent substitutes. It's a very inefficient way for us to manage these 3 needed employees. It's been in the budget for years in that way. Pat and I are proposing that we move that over to a regular position, or those regular positions. And also, Mr. Callow has requested that we add an additional food service worker in anticipation of building a grab-and-go station at the high school, which would be another serving station in an alternative location in the cafeteria for children to have opportunities either in the morning or at lunchtime. Instead of just going straight to the regular lunch line, it would be a little subset for a grab-and-go station. And Mr. Callow will be able to speak to that. He's here, yes. With the facilities ad, Mr. Cavazza is requesting 1 custodian and 1 maintenance worker, and we are anticipating the cost of $65,000 and the maintenance for $70,000. The bulk of that we are anticipating will be offset by BOCES rent. The main drive behind this is BOCES occupying Middle Hope. In case you didn't know that, we are in the process of developing a lease with Orange Ulster BOCES to rent Middle Hope from us. Part of that lease will be maintenance and cleaning of the facility, but there will be some offsetting revenue and aid for that facility. So that's the request from Mr. Cavazza to be able to fulfill that need. So this is the comprehensive list of things that made it to this level. I want to make sure that the public and the board understands there are a number of other requests that came from our principals and our directors that layer below that, just so that we're also as upfront as possible. This list stopped at additional clubs and activities at the last meeting. The rest of the list was added on for the purpose of open discussion, because these are some proposed positions that had some merit that the board wanted to have some discussion on. So with that, I put it to questions.
On the food service, none of those are full-time positions with benefits. It's just, you're talking about moving them from permanent subs to regular employees. There's still part-time employees.
That is correct.
That's why, and even with adding the one person, you talk for all of that, it's $14,000.
Correct. So we'd be talking about 4 people for $14,000, and they're all part-time positions. I believe they're all 5 days a week, correct? 5 days a week, but part-time during the lunch times.
And then on the physical education and the technology, both of those are areas where we're not currently meeting state regulations.
That is correct.
Is that right? Technology isn't about state regulation, right? That's about where we have more students than demand.
About both. In the middle school, there's a regulation for the number of technology seat, the amount of technology seat time that you're required to have, so we are short there, which is what Mr. Milazzo references. At the high school, we would like to expand our offerings or add additional sections of existing offerings. So I believe Mr. Lawler, Ms. Clinton, where's the 3-2 split?
I get 3-2.
Middle school, 3 sections, high school, 2 sections, of the 5 sections.
I didn't realize that. So what would be added to the middle school? Additional kids, or students to STEAM?
Come up and speak to her.
I know that not all 6th graders actually attend STEAM.
So currently, all 7th graders receive a half unit of study, and then some of our 6th graders receive a quarter unit of study, giving some of our students 3/4. The recommended amount is 1 3/4 total for the career and technical education piece, so you'd also add in the half unit of study in family consumer science to get to your 1 3/4. So the short answer of programming would be to give all of the 6th grade students that half or that quarter, which would increase them getting closer, and then an additional, or to make that a half altogether in 6th grade and a half in 7th grade, or to do a quarter in 6th grade and then a quarter in 8th grade, depending on, we're looking at a couple of the different proposals. Either way, they would reach their full unit that way with the increase of the additional 0.6.
So is that between your 2 technology classes, meaning technology for 7th grade and 6th grade for STEAM, or there's other classes that make up that number you just brought up?
Okay, so right now, every 7th grader gets their half, then some of the 6th graders get a quarter. Not all of my 6th graders, I don't have enough staffing for that, but we really should be giving them a full 1. So we're not there yet. So we're exploring the possibility of just giving all the 6th graders a half, along with all of the 7th graders a half, or looking at the possibility, scheduling-wise, to give a quarter in 6th grade, the half that's currently in 7th, and the other quarter in 8th grade. There's 2 different ways that we're looking at what fits best in the schedule, so that way we maximize the opportunity so every student would leave the middle school with the appropriate amount that's required, because we do not meet mandate.
But what programs fall into those categories?
What programs would fall into the 1 3/4 unit of study?
Yes.
So having just asked this specific question as I was sitting up in Albany today next to the person who just was involved in designing the program, there's a couple of different areas. So technology is the area that we are focusing on because it's a big initiative, it's a board goal, etc. So that's one area. Family and consumer science would be another. Ag science, agricultural science, some of the schools are providing that. That could actually count in the middle school. Business
No,
could
but
count.
which programs do we currently have that
Oh.
fall into the technology credits that there were?
Just right now, just 7th grade, half unit, and then some of the students get the STEAM class in 6th grade. So STEAM is also taught by the tech teacher. Oh, you want me to explain what 7th grade technology looks like?
What classes that we're currently offering meet this mandate?
7th grade technology with Ms. Strauss,
Yeah.
and 6th grade, what we refer to as STEAM.
And the family and consumer science.
And then family and consumer science would also fall under the 1 3/4 if you look at the whole unit, because the state has recognized that they needed to be more flexible in how you reach the 1 3/4. Right now, our students leave the middle school with 1 instead of 1 3/4. Some students, if they take STEAM, might leave us with 1 1/4, and some students, if they take the food and nutrition class in 8th grade, might also leave us in 1 1/4. But no matter how you look at it, none of our students leave with the required state amount of 1 3/4. Did I just confuse everybody? I didn't mean to.
I think, anybody else with that one?
So unfortunately, those are hard people to find, but the state's been trying to increase programming. So I was actually kind of interested today listening to one of the principals talk about the program that they brought to introduce some of the agricultural science programs. So it does give a lot of flexibility. Like, so looking ahead, I think that because you can also incorporate business, so there's a couple of different areas, and it was just kind of exciting to think that we could branch out. Maybe it's something to look at down the road.
Thank you.
So in terms of the high school 2 sections, we currently offer Technology 1, Technology 2, and Computer Science, computer applications, so building apps. We also have Broadcast Arts is a class that is taught by, it can be by a tech teacher, it can be by somebody else. But we definitely have not met demand in recent years. The 2 sections would allow us to meet that demand. We've changed some of the requirements for entry this year, so it's impossible for me to know exactly how we would allot those sections, but the answer is we will allot them as our students request courses. Might be an extra section of the computer apps, might be an extra section of technology 1 or 2, depending on what the students are asking for.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to speak to the custodian and maintenance worker piece. Orangeville Supposed, in their initial lease draft, has requested that we provide custodial services for that building. So our expectation is that we will fully bill the cost of that custodian back to Orangeville Supposed. That's a cost that they're going to incur whether they purchase the service through us or do it on their own. The maintenance worker, back in 2013, when we had the significant reductions in staff that we spoke about previously, we did reduce 1 maintenance worker. And Larry has been very patient. He kind of asks me every year if we can put that person back up for consideration. But now with Orangeville Supposed intending to occupy Middle Hope, we're going to attempt to get them to pay for half of the base salary of that maintenance worker. Again, through Orangeville Supposed, we're a little bit more open to those types of arrangements because they don't directly, unlike Hudson Hills Academy, who leased from us previously, they pay that money directly. Orangeville Supposed, the way they work, they build that into a program cost, and all the component districts who send kids to those programs pay a share of that. So it's not really like, it's the district's money that's being used to fund that type of position. But we did see it as a great opportunity to get Larry back up to the staffing level that he needs to be at, and at the same time trying to offset a portion of that cost through the lease.
Pat, I have a question on the page of variables and options.
On the what?
Variables and options. Just, do you have any outlook there on some potential that's going to either help or work against us in terms of cost increases or decreases, or is it too early for that yet?
In terms of state aid? Or?
Any of those things that might adjust the rollover budget to something more accurate.
Well, yeah, I mean, I anticipate that our state aid numbers are going to be somewhat better than what was proposed by the governor's proposal. Traditionally, the governor's proposal is always our worst looking aid numbers. The legislature usually has a much better looking picture, and then it usually settles somewhere in between. Sure.
So a little insight on the state aid right now. By this point, every school year, typically we would see the two House budget proposals. So the governor puts out his proposal back in January or February. Usually by the end of February or part of March, the legislature, both the Senate and the House, Assembly, put out their respective budget proposals. You may have read the byline in the newspaper this last week that the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor have not agreed on a required agreement in the budget process, which is a revenue agreement. So they don't agree on what the state's revenue picture is. And because they don't agree on what the state's revenue picture, the Assembly and the Senate have opted to not propose budgets yet. So quite honestly, we don't have any new information as to what the Senate and what the Assembly are proposing, because that's where you can kind of triangulate. Here's the governor, here's the Senate, here's the Assembly, and guesstimate where we might be. We have no idea what the Senate or the Assembly's budget proposals are at this time. The statute of the state requires now the comptroller to come up with a binding number, a figure for revenue for the state, and then the governor and the two houses will work off of that number to develop the final budget. It's already. So we don't have a good picture at this point. Traditionally, Pat is 100% correct. Your package is usually a little bit better once the legislature gets involved in the process.
Nicholas, can you just give us the clubs that are at the 2 to 3 year mark that require that money?
I can get that for you. I don't have it at the top of my head, but I have a chart with it all that I can get for you that we'll have, but I'll send it out before the next meeting. I just don't have it all right now on my head, so. Sorry.
Anybody else?
And again, this is not a decision point tonight, it's a discussion item. This is, we have 3 more meetings for this. Our deadline for adopting a budget is at our second meeting of April, which is just after spring break. So we've got 2 meetings prior to spring break, and then a budget adoption meeting would be the 3rd meeting, which is the meeting right after spring break. Incidentally, also, that's the same meeting that we're required to adopt the BOCES budget and also elect BOCES board members.
Hopefully by then we'll have some idea from the state what the numbers are going to be.
The budget for the state is due by April 1st unless they choose, well, it's been about a decade now that they've met that deadline, so every year they said they may not make it this year, so we'll see. This may be that year. But yes, it's a critical piece to this because our revenue stream is very dependent on where the state lies with our state aid package. For everyone's digestion too, we work very, very hand in hand with our State Senator Skoufis and also Assemblyman Jacobson. Met with them multiple times regarding Marlboro's specific needs. Met with Assemblyman Jacobson last Friday and meeting next Friday with Senator Skoufis again. So we're making sure that they understand where Marlboro is and what our needs are. and both of them are brand new to us, so they're very good conversations.
Thank you. Move forward to the Vision 2020 capital presentation.
So I'll introduce our architect in just a minute, but I want to start out with just some baseline statements here. The administration embarked on a process to review the condition of our facilities as required by the state of New York a number of years ago, in 2015. And that produced what's called the Building Condition Survey. The Building Condition Survey outlines, from an engineer and architect's perspective, areas within the district that need to be worked on. And it's usually categorized in the necessity of work. So some things need to be done immediately because they're either deteriorating to such a great level or they're directly connected to health and safety matters and need to be dealt with right away. Some things are a little less urgent. Over the last couple of years, our Facilities and Operations group has been spending a substantial amount of time working on items that we can handle in-house off the Building Condition Survey. Then you reach a point where some of the items are large enough that we can't handle them all in-house, so we need some more expert perspective and also expertise in the trades to be able to do that work. And it's conducive to do that work with a bond, because then the state pays for a substantial portion of the work. When you do it out of your regular operating budget, it's straight out of the Marlboro dollars in our budget. When you do it through a bond, a substantial portion is paid for by New York State. So we asked the architectural firm of CS Arts to come in and review our BCS. It was 3 years old, reprioritize, and reset where we are with things. So infused through this next presentation is all items that are still in the needed state of repair or improvement or replacement that were on the original Building Condition Survey, and some other areas that enhance our instructional program because either the space or the room or the facility has reached its limit as far as its usefulness. So tonight's presentation focuses initially on the elementary. We've spent time at the high school and we've spent time at the middle school. We've got a short presentation for our elementary piece with some visuals, but then we'd like to go take a walk so we can show you exactly what we're talking about for the elementary space. If you've been part of the middle school and the high school ones, you'll notice very quickly that the elementary one is much shorter because the needs here are much less. But then once we're done with that, we're going to do a full recap on where we are with the full Vision 2020 proposal. And you'll see tonight two scenarios that we're asking the board to look at. Scenario 1 and Scenario 2. Those two scenarios comprehensively look at all of the BCS issues, all of the items presented by our administration, and those that have been vetted by our group for the board's consideration. So tonight truly begins the board's opportunity, in addition to what they've been doing, to tell the administration, this is where we want to go, this is where we don't want to go, and this is how we want you to proceed going forward. If you were here at the last meeting, there was concern over timeline, and I fully respect that. We have set up a timeline that allows this Board of Education to choose a vote by the public this May. If for some reason, this Board of Education says that timeline is too quick, there's too many questions, too many issues, that's fine. The timeline can be adjusted. We need to vote, if we want to have a May vote, at the March 21st meeting or at the latest, April 1st. If that timeline is too condensed, I've assured the board and I'm assuring the public, that's fine. We can pause, reset a timeline, and continue to discuss. But what we tried to do for this package tonight is put it in a way that is clear as far as the needs, so you'll see a lot of visuals, you'll see a lot of financials. We've assembled our administrative team, our architectural team, and our financial team to answer all questions that we have as a group, as individuals, as a board, as a public, however the board chooses to proceed through this. We anticipate that we'll have all of those questions answered and the platter will be laid to make a decision. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Tom Ritzenfuller, who has the good stuff now.
Okay, good evening. My name is Tom Ritzendaler with CS Arch. This is the third meeting now. We're now at the elementary school, so that's a very good thing. So we're going to focus on the elementary school at first. We're going to carry a very similar agenda as in past meetings. So we're going to review some of the information on how we got to this point for those of the public that haven't been at the previous meetings. Again, focus on the elementary. We're going to talk about funding sources and budget estimates tonight. That'll be at first. The decision-making moving forward, and then if there would be a vote, what would be the post-vote timeline. So, again, as Mr. Brooks pointed out, we started with the 2015 BCS in a comprehensive review of that building condition survey. It is 3 to 4 years old at this point. It'll get redone next year, in the 2020 year. We looked at confirming what work had been completed by the district over those years, and of the remaining items, which ones were still certainly of priority, and with that, recosting those items to make sure that we're dealing with today's dollars moving forward. Because remember, all of those estimates were prepared back in 2015. We also, as it was pointed out, met with each of the administrators to review their buildings and talk about some of the key issues that needed to perhaps be addressed in each of the buildings, so more programmatic driven items. We confirmed the current use of each of the spaces within the existing buildings. That's always the baseline. And then we look to identify any of those potential issues or deficiencies within the building moving forward. So certainly want to thank all of the administrators for giving a lot of their time. It's been many meetings for a good length of time, and that was certainly appreciated. And so what we saw against that kind of common approach to speaking with the administrators was some commonalities. Of course, we've talked about this several times. Safety and security is very paramount. So the safe building access, the secured vestibules at each of the buildings was a consistent theme when we approached each of the buildings and spoke with each of the administrators. The student and family support services areas were another real earmark for each of the buildings for improvements in those areas, how they serve the students, how they serve those families at each of the buildings in a continuum. The physical education areas, spaces both within the building and outside the building. Food services, how we're serving students in the environments, how we're offering flexible ways to improve that experience for students. Move them through the grab-and-go concept certainly would be a welcome addition at the high school. Toileting is always an issue, and certainly at the middle school was one of a key issue. And then, as we pointed out, especially through the building condition survey, in general, systems over time reach their obsolescence. They reach a point where they need to be addressed in a more comprehensive way, either by a major overhaul or by replacement. So those were some of the common district issues in each of the facilities. So let's now go to the elementary, the building we're at currently. Certainly one that's been improved most recently with the large-scale addition that we're in. But again, some of those key issues, the secured entry, the secured vestibule at the entry was one of the key focuses of our attention. We do have some issues in sound attenuation at one of the music rooms that really needs to be addressed to be able to provide for proper focus, both not only in the music room, but in the adjacent classroom. Recess play amenities have been discussed, both for better serving the number of students in this building, as well as providing a very safe experience when children are out in the play areas. And that, by that I mean with the replacement of the play surfacing materials from something that doesn't have to be continually replenished by the facilities group, but one that can be, provide that same safety feature over time. Replacement of wood softening material around the original structure. That wood is deteriorating, it's rotting, it's allowing for insect infestation. And so replacement of that wood material is certainly something that was considered one of the higher priorities. And then a couple areas of the building, there's some minor BCS issues and some egress enhancements that we want to do, again, for the safety of the building and for participants, especially in an emergency egress situation. So this is the existing layouts of the buildings, divided and color-coded by what type of use they are. And I think with that, what we wanted to do was at least bring everybody out to the vestibule area so people could see that condition. We could talk about the need for the secured vestibule and see it firsthand, and then we'll come back in and then we'll do the more comprehensive look. So we ready? This one will be much shorter.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. So again, this is the existing arrangement out in the lobby area of the elementary building. And so you can see the main office here, and this is the conference room I was speaking about. And so when we put the new doors in, what you'll see, this allows a secured vestibule with a greeter window and a door into that main office buzzed in from the secure vestibule and then ultimately into the school. And so you can see we just made that conference room a little bit smaller. It still serves up to about 6 individuals, so it's still a good-sized conference room. It allowed us to move the rest of the main office back in kind and preserve the space as it exists, and then allows the space for the greeter. So it was a very elegant solution from Patricia. Middle name, Debbie?
Deborah.
I'm going to add it. Yeah, finish that. So that was a very good solution to be very cost effective in making these changes to provide for that secure vestibule. And just to give everyone a feel for what that would look like, we prepared a series of renderings. So you can see the existing lobby space and then a rendering of what that secure vestibule would look like. You can see we're trying to open it up to visibility. We want to keep the visibility to the main lobby for security reasons as well. So reviewing some of the middle school, again, some of the key issues were obviously the vehicular and pedestrian movements on the site, the secured entry, again, student and family services, the gym locker rooms, the music room, the dining hall, serving lines, the nursing facilities, toileting, the makerspace or the innovation lab. Remember, that's down in the basement area. It's the only space with enough students in the basement. And then, again, the items for the building conditions survey. So we identified the various parts of the building. You can see all of this is on the district's website. It was presented previously. It's all the various areas that I just spoke about. And again, what we did was we did some renderings. I didn't do them. This gentleman, Nick, in the audience did them for me. But we did some renderings to show you the existing entry, which is, of course, into the stairwell. And this would be what the new entrance and main office would look like in its relocated space. So what you're seeing here is the entry doors from the exterior. There's a greeter booth here. And then this door is into the main office. And the main office promotes that safe ingress, and then you would be buzzed into the corridor system. Again, still at the middle school, the existing student and family services suite. Remember, it was very tight and condensed when we were in there. The proposal for the new student family services suite, bringing all the counselors and psychologists together, space for student research on careers, space for meeting with families, and of course the administrative space as well. And this would be in the space occupied where the existing main office is currently. The renovations proposed for the middle section of the building Again, with the main office relocation that took over space occupied by technology, technology would move across the hall, and so this is the vision for the new technology space, which is aligned with both computer graphics or computer lab as well as the innovation lab. They share that function. You can see the existing technology room and the vision for the new. This would be the new innovation lab. We did take a picture of the existing innovation lab in the basement. It's a difficult frame of reference, but this would be the new innovation lab, again, with that shared computer room in between. And then this is that graphics computer lab that's, again, in between the innovation lab and the technology lab. Moving on to the high school. Again, the high school, again, started with the secured entry, the main office renovations to support that, secured entry change, student support services, the nursing suite, the dining hall, athletics, toileting, art program enhancements, the site athletic improvements, performing arts improvements, and that includes music, as well as the identified utility condition survey improvements. So again, we did a similar thing. This is the existing building. These are the plans of the improved areas throughout the building. And here you can see the number of areas we're hitting throughout the building with respect to the improvements of space serving students. And then upstairs as well. And then outside with the improvements to the track facility and the replacement of the turf. So this is the existing lobby space. Again, it's very closed off. Person, when they come in and go to the greeter window, has to come back through the lobby and around the corner to access the main office, and certainly outside at that point. And this is the vision for the new reconfigured lobby. So we still have the greeter window here, but it's a secured window, and we have a door next to it, which would allow access then into the main office in this zone, and then out this door into eventually the corridor. Again, a lot of glass for visibility to provide for that safety and security. Existing student support services, again, one that's very tight right now. Not a lot of windows in this space. And then here's the vision for the new student support family services. Again, a lot more space for counselors to work with both parents and their children, the students to do independent research, access to computers, and access to all of those careers materials in different spaces. And this again brings all of the counselors and psychologists together, as well as a dedicated conferencing facility for that department. Fitness, again, we talked about the changes to the athletic areas, including the fitness. So this would be an expansion of what's now just a weight room, and it would allow for fitness to be expanded to include all of the cardio equipment, all of the equipment that serves the different muscle groups, as well as the free weights in a much better format. Existing cafeteria, and again, the changes to the cafeteria internally to open up the lines, provide the additional grab-and-go line, and make those changes that will transition this from really a cafeteria setting to a dining setting, both for inside and outside, with different levels of seating groups, perimeter seating, which would allow students to do independent study, as well as, of course, have their lunch, have access to charging stations for their Chromebooks and other devices. The existing art rooms, of course, we looked at how the rooms were segregated because they were providing for all of the different facets of art. The new art studios, looking at dividing them into a two-dimensional studio, a 3D studio, and within the 3D studio, adding on the computer graphics lab, all connected into the same kind of collection of or suite of rooms, also with support for storage as well as the kiln room. So based on all of the information and all the projects that were being considered, we did review with the district's council what type of actions we would be looking for under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It is the interpretation that this is all type 2 action, and so if the board were to advance any referendum, they would need to pass resolution of no impact or negative declaration prior to putting that resolution forward. So we've talked a bit about the different funding sources at each of these areas. So we've talked about annual budgetary appropriations. We've talked about the $100,000 capital outlay projects. There's a couple of grants available to the district, as well as the energy performance contract. And I know one of the energy performance contract representatives has been here to discuss those opportunities within the district. And then, of course, the funding source of using a capital project bond referendum. So we've taken each of the schools and we've identified budgets for each of the improvements that were identified. And you can see we start with the Marlboro Middle School. And so we've taken each of these and we've condensed it into a single graphic that would look at the two scenarios that have been identified for review by the Board of Education. So we'll start with scenario 1. Scenario 1's a very basic scenario. It really started with the priorities of elements of the building conditions survey, as well as the safety and security with respect to the secured vestibules in each of the buildings. So you can see with the middle school, we have the main office and secured vestibule. That also requires the main office to be relocated to the appropriate spot to provide for that. And along with that, there are the other interior improvements, because as you move the main office, now you have to backfill that with the guidance and the technology and those other things that ultimately get displaced. And so that's this whole first subset of work. The cafeteria serving renovations, that identifies just doing the toilet rooms for the students within the cafeteria. That was considered a very high priority. And then you can see the building improvements from the 2015 BCS. You will note in this scenario 1, this does not include the band chorus room addition. And so in this scenario, the innovation lab would still need to remain downstairs in the basement level. So with the high school, again, you see that security vestibule and main office renovations to facilitate that secured vestibule change, and then the building improvements for the 2015 BCS. So a very basic list for the high school. At the elementary school, again, the secured vestibule, some other recommended building improvements that were considered very high priorities, like the acoustic separation that we talked about between some of the classrooms. The improvements to the recess areas in this scenario is strictly just the playground resurfacing. There were some other recommendations for additional play apparatus and some other play features outside, but this only includes the surfacing. And then, of course, we have the 2015 building condition improvements. So all total, those equal a project total of a little over $9.8 million. So moving to scenario 2, you can see this is a little more comprehensive. In scenario 2 now, we're actually adding in the band chorus room addition. To complete that, we moved the innovation lab up to the main level. In addition to that, we see a reduction to the 2015 BCS, and that's because some of those items were work on the former or current band chorus room, so we're eliminating those. At the high school now, we're looking at the student family support services, the nurses renovation, which gets displaced with that improvement, the athletic renovations to that whole fitness area where we expand the fitness, we bring the AD downstairs, we expand the training room. We have the art room renovations, the music renovations, the interior renovations for the cafeteria, some of those other building improvements, the recommended site improvements, the track, and the improvements to the turf, the replacement of the turf. This number also does include About 300 and, I forget what line item, it's 300 and something thousand for the exterior cafeteria area outside of that expanded patio. And then the building improvements from the 2015 BCS. And then at the elementary school, it remains the same as within scenario 1, and those all total a little over $19.9 million.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about something that may be not quite as fun. These projects are great, but how are we going to pay for them? As Tom had mentioned before, there are some funds that are currently available, so that's going to be the first item that we want to take a peek at. In speaking with, the financial team at the district, we're anticipating at this point that there's roughly about $3 million of available funds between various reserves and other monies that could be applied to this project. So if we look at scenario 1, as Tom had mentioned, it's a project cost of about $9.9 million. If we subtract out the $3 million available funds that the district have, that would leave a remaining balance of about $6.9 million that we need to go to our friends at Wall Street and ask to perhaps borrow the funds to pay for those projects. In issuing that debt, there's a number of things that we want to look at. We want to be as strategic as possible.
Hang on 1 second. This has got an old set of slides, so we want to make sure we have the right numbers on it. So, Mike, could you help us swap the correct set of numbers? These are inaccurate. One on Word docs, right? Yeah. We've had multiple files come back for the last.
Hey, Mike, while we're waiting for this, I have a question on the other slide. Where you had the,
Let's get through.
I just have a quick question. So, when you had the scenarios, prior to all this, when we were talking about in different meetings about business condition surveys and things we could do, we were talking about the possibility of $100,000 projects and being basically refundable almost, but are those separate from these scenarios, or is it is?
We can speak to the one that we're working on for this school year and our plans for future.
And you can only do one a year. Russell just reminded me. Okay. But it is separate. That was my question.
And we get no aid.
That's the whole idea about it. Yeah.
We get the building aid? You can qualify. Very favorable.
That's just significant.
All right, these look a little more familiar. Just to get back to our presentation, we know for scenario 1, we're looking at roughly a project cost of about $9.9 million. In working with the district's financial team, we've determined there's approximately $3 million of available funds that we can apply to that, which would leave about $6.9 million of funds that we need to borrow to commence work on this project. In issuing that debt, we want to be as strategic as possible. There's a number of factors that play into that. For a school district, one of the biggest things is the amount of building aid that you'll get. What state building aid is it's funds that the state will provide to you, so it'll offset both the cost of debt, and the district would receive funds on this $3 million as well. Based on conversations that we've had with the architects, we're anticipating at this point that about 85% of the total project costs will be subject to getting state building aid. For 2019-20, the district's building aid is about 70.1%, which means that of this $9.9 million, the state will pick up approximately 70.1%. As a ballpark, that's about $5.9 million that the state will pay for, leaving a remaining cost of about $4 million that we have to finance. Over the term of the bonds that we'd be issuing approximately 14-year term bonds. It would work out to about $120,000 a year. One of the other key factors that we look at in terms of the debt is, do you have debt that's currently in your books that may be falling off? It's very common that we try to look at your full debt picture. We want to keep your payments level if possible. It's always easy, if you're used to making a certain payment, it's always easy to kind of filter debt in. The district's in a unique position right now. It has a significant amount of debt that will be rolling off of its books in the coming years. In between 2021 and 2022, there's a couple series of bonds that will be falling off the books. So although we're showing a cost here of about $120,000 a year for this issuance, there's actually going to be no tax impact to the taxpayer for this specific issuance because there's bonds falling off at a greater degree than what we would be adding in. In our next slide, we have scenario 2. It's a similar breakdown that we just reviewed. So I'll just kind of pop through these numbers. Again, we're anticipating about a $3 million district contribution, which would leave a borrowing amount of $16.9 million. When we factor in the building aid that the state will pay, it's about $11.9 million, leaving a total project cost of $8 million. We work out to about $463,000 a year. But again, this would still fall well within the debt that's coming off of the district's books. So from a pure debt perspective, there would be no tax impact to the average taxpayer.
So we wanted to look at these two scenarios and look at how that impacted our overall fund balance and reserves on the longer term. So we looked at the two options under two scenarios. One where the district applied $3 million and another where we applied $4.5 million. And we looked at what that did to our overall fund balance from year to year, going out to the year 29 and 30. So as we can see, the baseline is where we would be with no project being issued. And option 1 was the $9.9 million project with $3 million applied. Option 2 was the $9.9 million with $3 million applied. Or excuse me, option 2 was the $19 million project with $3 million applied. And the same for option 1 and 2, except we looked at what would have happened if we applied $4.5 million. We have another $1.5 million sitting in a debt service reserve. But we have an issue out a little ways where we have some state aid payments stopping, while we still have a couple of debt payments to make. So it would be our recommendation that we hold on to that $1.5 million in the debt service reserve. And you can see really the impact between the two options, between 3 and 4.5 million, is fairly negligible on the overall net impact on fund balance. So we have the option 1 project at the end of the 29-30 school year. We got about $11.7 million in reserves. Option 2, $7.8 million. And again, option 1 and 2, under $4.5 million, are very close to those numbers. So the important point to take away is we see where the change occurs, where our fund balance is decreasing, slight increase, little decrease, and then we start coming back up and building again. Same thing in this scenario. We initially run down and we continue to use reserves in the fund balance. Right now, we use about $1.6 million a year on our planned budget deficit. As that wanes away, we continue to run a surplus, and we're able to start building that amount of money back up, those funds in the reserves and fund balance. At no point in any of these scenarios do we completely exhaust reserves, and during this entire time, we always maintain our 4% fund balance, which we're allowed by law.
Hey, Pat, can you stop there for a second? First of all, we couldn't see your pointer. So where were you identifying the section where it went down a little and then came back up?
Well, you can see the batteries.
Just tell me the years. What were the years?
Well, John, you just see how run through everything and then come back to questions?
Okay, I'm not following what he's pointing to.
Well, 6.9 is 5.5, 4.9, 4.4, 4.7, 4.6, 4.8, 5.1, 5.7.
All right.
So there's a switch right in these years where we.
I see. I have no idea where you're pointing.
Yeah, later, I think it was batteries down. So right in those years, and that's what you've seen on our regular 5-year forecast. You've seen where we continue to consume reserves and fund balance on planned deficits, and then the tide turns, and we start to go the other way where we're able to build those reserves and fund balance back up as the longer-term debt drops off. The interesting piece to note here, out of that $1.7 million in debt that we have dropping off, 1.2 million of that was a tax certiorari proceeding from Central Hudson that there's no debt service aid associated with that. So we pay that out, we get nothing indeed from the state in return. If that $1.2 million was a bond used for capital work, we would be getting 70.1% back on those expenditures. So it's a somewhat of a unique position because just by replacing like for like with a different type of debt, we would see a significant benefit for the district. The battery's down. So this is just a sample of what the bond proposition would look like for the option one, the $9.9 million project. So that was scenario 2. Again, just an example of what the bond proposition would look like. And this is the
I don't think we need to go back. I mean, these are the important things. It's the timeline now.
What we wanted to show you was that there's the verbiage that would be used if the board chose to adopt.
We've got a lot of decision-making on numbers for the...
And of that $3 million that we plan to apply from the district's finances, 1.5 million of that would come from the money that we put in the capital reserve for the specific purpose, and the other 1.5 million would come through budgetary appropriation of reserves that we have in place that we're able to utilize for that purpose.
So from a timeline perspective, decision-making, of course, we're at the March 7th date. To keep on a schedule, the board wanted to consider a vote for the May budget, looking at a resolution on March 21st. Otherwise, it would need to be a special meeting of the board to meet all the requirements for the 45 days of public comments. So same as with your budget vote. And that would result in the public bond vote on the 21st. So go to the next slide. Okay. So with that bond vote on the 21st, we have a design process to go through to prepare technical documents for review by the State Education Department. We would like to get those done by the end of the year. With an SED review process, we would like to outsource that review to facilitate a much faster track of getting it approved. Because right now, the normal queue is at about 48 weeks-ish, whereas a outsourced review, some of those are as short as a month, but certainly we look at a 1 to 2 month period where we could go to a public bid process in early spring. And we would see this construction over 2 phases of work focused on the summer of 2020 as well as the summer of 2021 with closeouts of the projects sometime in late 2021.
So as we now prepare the Board of Education to begin to debate and deliberate, there's just 3 key takeaways. There's a series of charts that the board has been looking at we've got our accountant, our auditing group, we've got our bond counsel, we've got our business office, we've got our architects looking at all these massive charts of numbers and dollars and figures projecting out over years. Pat's chart that he referred to looks at our balances in the bank accounts under the two different scenarios. Really, the takeaway is this project keeps the promise that we have in our responsibility in these roles to maintain and improve our facilities. It does not add a single dollar to the taxpayer, and in fact maximizes state aid on money we already pay. It uses money that we have in the bank in reserves for these purposes, and reduces our current payments after the 2021 school year. If we do all of scenario 2, we will at the same time reduce our total debt payment annually by $885,000. So with that as the footprint, let's talk.
Well, I guess the question, and I think in fairness, Mike, is maybe rather than move right into the discussion, let's go to our, move to our public comment period, move to our business, and then have a discussion so that the business, this could be extensive, so rather than, let's get our business out of the way and get our public comments ahead of time, so that we can have the opportunity to then, I just think it'll be a little smoother and we
We have to make a motion.
no? They did their presentation and we'll just take it up. Pick up the discussion and go over. Okay, so we'll move to public comment on the agenda items. Anybody has any items on the agenda that they'd like to discuss, please come to the podium. That's an agenda item. Yep.
Hi, Joanne Weaver. I have a number of questions. When we're breaking down the budget, I've noticed it went up from the last presentation because I printed it off the computer. Tonight's agenda was not on the computer until late tonight about it going up. So my question is, the levy went up. How much is that going to cost the taxpayers? How much are we looking at that's going up? You're adding all these positions, and again, we're going into the structuring gym and hiring a gym teacher. We've had this conversation before, and I've noticed there's a lot of new positions that we're adding to the budget. So where is the money coming from? How much is it costing the taxpayer? It hasn't been broken down on how you plan on what it's going to cost each taxpayer. It's not in here.
So at this point, we've made no decision on what we're adding. These are just proposals, and we will have no idea what it's going to cost until the state aid numbers, until the state budget's adopted, and so we still are away from that process until we're at adoption. This is all just taking comments from everybody about that.
And my other question is, in the budget, did you decrease or increase each department in the district? And if so, by how much?
So this, what's presented right now is a rollover budget. So other than contractual increases, all the expenses were all constant from this current year to next year.
So nobody else got an increase? Everybody's got the same budget as they had last year, other than contractual?
The only thing that's an increase in this budget that we've talked about, facilities committee, we've got a modest increase to equipment lines for facilities because we realized that we didn't budget enough money to buy a proper level vehicle that we were interested in buying. So with the recommendation of the facilities committee, but we bumped that up slightly so that if we look to buy a vehicle, we have the funds available.
So with that, to the public, what the facility committee is actually looking to increase?
Well, we can certainly discuss it when
Yeah, when we get to the budget
discussion.
My other question is for the clubs that are in this budget, for the 8,000, are any of them designated for special education clubs after school? Because again,
All clubs are open to all students.
that's not necessarily true, Ms. Brooks, because I know that transportation is always an issue for special ed kids in this district for doing after-school things. Because I know through the years of Special Olympics, we weren't allowed to have buses after school to pick the kids up. They were training during school. So that is my question is, will you have transportation for the special ed kids if they decide to join these clubs?
Yes. As with all students. Yes.
Because in the past we haven't. And are we going to encourage special ed?
We do now, so it's, I don't know what you're saying.
No, Frank, you don't.
Anybody is eligible to take the extra buses that are available to everybody.
No, because I know for a fact we weren't. Okay, and I know this because I was told when my children were here, they could not join the bus because they had to have special transportation home, and we do not provide that. We have a 4 o'clock bus or a 4:15 bus, correct?
3:15.
Right. So those are my questions that are on the agenda. And I'd like to know, tax-wise, where we stand as far as the
We won't have those numbers until the state aid numbers come out, and we, as a board, make a determination on the process of what is going to be added, if anything.
Because there seems to be a lot that got added into this budget that was not there. And like I said, technology teacher, the speech teacher, can we restructure some of the things that we're doing? Cutting costs, our tax with signage is still not settled. Our taxes keep going up and up and up and up, and contractuals do take a big part of our taxes. We're not putting any money from the reserve into this, are we?
Well, no decisions have been made yet, that's what I'm saying. This is the budget process.
Correct.
You've been involved in this for enough years.
Yep.
It's a process, and we're not there yet to adopting a final budget. The board is going to discuss which items they want to add in and where we go from there.
Thank you, I just wanted to know that. Thank you.
Well, any other public comments on the agenda items?
Good evening. My name is Tim McInerney. I'm a teacher here at MES, and I first of all would like to commend the board and the administration for the proposed changes to our entryway and our security. I think that they seem to be very impressive and very necessary, unfortunately, in today's climate. But I would also like to request that the board consider, as part of the improvement project, looking into the heating and cooling system in the building. I know there were some references made to obsolete items in the proposal. I'm not sure if that was part of it or not, but it's really sort of a twofold problem in that, I've been in the building since the last improvement project, and the system has never really operated efficiently. It would seem there are pockets of hot and cold throughout the building, throughout the year, at all different times of the year, and it's also over the last couple of years we have seen a lot of leakage happening around the building. I know it's been expressed that that is a result of some poorly insulated piping and things that have to do with the heating and cooling system. So I'm just going to formally request that you consider that as part of the improvement project as well. That's something that's a big concern of the building. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Just as a comment, we do have
Any other comments on the agenda items? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, approve the contracts, agreements, and reports as presented. Personnel recommendation, food donations to the backpack program, unofficial Board of Education meeting minutes of 2/7 and 2/21, textbook adoption, and then Ellenville Central School District transportation agreement. Can I have a motion? Russell, second. James. Any discussion? Please cast your vote. Oh, question, sorry.
The leave of absences and the additions, is it safe to assume they're replacing each other? Because it just seemed like odd
Timing, yeah.
timing.
Yeah, the timing is odd. Some of them are medically driven, so there's some delays in the processing and timing of that. But these are one-to-one slots.
Any other questions? Okay, please cast your vote.
Motion carries 6-0.
There's a long delay there in getting to welcome 2 new staff members, so I know that this is something I enjoy each time we add someone on. So Julie Boylan is a certified art teacher in visual arts K-12. We are very happy that Julie has been working with us for some time, and now as the daily substitute, but now that we have the formal leave finalized and Julie's certification all in order, I would like to introduce Julie Boylan, visually art certified from the State University of New York at Potsdam in art education. So welcome. And that's here at the elementary school. And I'd also like to introduce Kristen Chamberlain. Kristen is a childhood education 1-6 certified teacher, also earth science, fantastic certification, one of the best to have. Earth science 7 through 12, so welcome Kristen. She is going to be working, actually she is now working in our elementary school, and she got her undergraduate degree from SUNY New Paltz with a bachelor's in childhood education and earth science. Welcome.
We move on to the adoption of student calendar. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, approve the student calendar for the 2019-2020 school year as presented. Can I have a motion? John Amaro. Can I have a second? James. Any discussion? We're going to have a fun graduation again?
No, next year it normalizes. Yeah, it goes back to a regular normal Friday. Yeah, it would be the Friday the 26th.
Except for Wednesday. Any other discussion? Please vote. Yes. Yes. Sometimes technology is not much better. Okay. So before we move back to the buildings, does anybody have any other old business? Okay. Does anybody have any other new business? Just because I know we spend a lot of time on it. Any other items? Okay, so then we'll move to the other item of the proposed capital program. And we've got, moved to questions now. Obviously, they've given us a proposal from their aspects. We now want to look at nothing we have that detailed report line by line, but we're not back, you know, they, proposition 1, proposition 2, are just an overall for us to look at, but we can look at any specific items, lines, if we want to move things across, we want to leave it all the same, but this is really a good time, we can talk about some of those things and, open it up wherever you want to start.
Well, I'm happy that the security is, being handled across the board in all three schools. That's good to see. One thing that I think is important, that I think should go from scenario 2 to scenario 1 is we've got at the middle school, we're doing the student support services, and I think that should be carried through at the high school, so it's the same kind of features, and when you go from middle school to the high school, you're having the same experience. So I think that the student family support services should come over to scenario 1 in the high school, which would mean that the nurse suite renovation would have to go over to scenario 1. So I think that's something that's important.
Maybe because I think there's a lot. Maybe why don't we try this? Let's start with the elementary school. Does anybody have any concerns with let's just look at just the elementary school, because that's one that's both ways on both sides. Does anybody have any concerns? Are we comfortable with what's proposed here at the elementary?
I have a question, what's included in the line item other recommended improvements? What are we referring to?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
What are we recommending?
So.
What are we recommending to be included in that line item of other building improvements?
So in the other recommended improvements, there are the acoustical treatments for the music room. We've got some door sound seals for one of the rooms to separate acoustically the third grade classroom from that music room. We've got a partition wall and a room, dividing a room into 2 separate areas for some additional program support. And we've got a door to the cafeteria from the corridor to provide a safer egress condition and eliminate the downward corridor.
So to my question before, could that potentially be included in those $100,000 projects that get affiliated, or is there a reason why they don't define them?
Certainly these could. They're all in a singular building. The issue of capturing the building aid is something that would need to be discussed, but certainly they.
Just a little perspective on that. This year's $100,000 project is focusing in this school. Each $100,000 project can only be in one school at a time, and it's to deal with what Mr. McInerney referred to as some of the leaking pipes. There's condensation around some of the pipes, and that's creating some staining and some water conditions when it's humid. So we're going to eliminate that problem here. Discussion for the 19-20 school year with the $100,000 project right now is kind of hovering around 2 areas. One is the generator at the high school and connecting that to more health, safety, and required elements to be able to keep that facility and our communication systems up and running, and a couple of other smaller items. So we're trying to look at that from a different perspective for the $100,000 project.
Yeah, and I think what we got to worry about with that $100,000 project item is we're only, they're always looking the 1 year ahead, not long term. And really knowing that we have that as a fallback for 2 years out or 3 years out, rather than things we know we have to do or should be doing, that then when it comes 2 years from now, we may not have that ability to do that thing that comes up. We might want to do an emergency purchase then, and then we wouldn't get the same aid rates.
Okay. And Mike, you touched on something that I was going to ask as well, but even more. So Mr. McInerney mentioned the pipes leaking and the inconsistent heating and cooling. So is any of that get addressed in the building improvements line?
No, it's not. Many of those controls are actually going to be considered and under the energy performance contract. So that's kind of a different parallel. We're really talking with the facilities committee tonight. So those issues are going to be addressed and worked with. It's just not through this project.
So it was concluded that it's a control issue and not anything else that...
There's a lot of different things. That's a whole detailed entity in and of itself. So
it's too much of an expansion for this project to include that in, because there's a different way to approach it and fund it. So that's not for tonight's discussion. We don't have any details for you. As we were talking with the facilities committee tonight, the energy performance contract is something that's going to be dealt with in the next facilities committee before it comes out here. I guess I'm thinking, so the answer is it's not, to Mr. McNamara's question, those things are not going to be addressed in the current scenario proposals. Maybe others, but not in this.
So right now, we've already submitted the SEB, gotten the letter of intent to proceed with our $100,000 project here. The $100,000 project here will deal with the uninsulated pipe run down the main long haul, which is providing condensation issues. We've got water issues, some slight mold issues with the high humidity last year. So that will be mitigated through that work. Also included in that $100,000 project are various roof leaks that we've had in this building that were persistent, that we know have existed for a while. So this $100,000 project will handle the roof leaks at this school and the condensation issues related to the uninsulated pipe. But the building control systems district-wide are included in both the proposals that we received for the energy performance contract. So it's not intended to be addressed through the capital project, but we are planning to address those issues just through another mechanism.
Yeah, why I brought that up, in case there was other things in between those, like venting and, various other construction types.
When they come in, if we proceed with the energy performance contract, they will come in and do a comprehensive audit. They will be looking at everything in terms of airflow, just weather stripping, the whole nine.
That's the answer.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're good for the elementary school? Okay. So let's move on to the middle school, which I think needed the largest amount of work. Just trying to get the right page. Start page.
Yeah. My question is, the band chorus room addition in the middle school is $3.2 million, and it's only in scenario 2. So what does it affect in scenario 1? So I remember when we walked through, opening that part of the school up was going to affect a lot of other rooms in the building. So what are we losing if we don't put that in?
Let me give you an idea about, before I answer the question, why we have two scenarios. Because as we went through a 3 or 4 hour discussion administratively with Tom and our group, we had 3 scenarios. And as we started to work through all of those different little bits and pieces, a lot of things started, we did a 10, a 15, and a $19 million option. So as we started to look at what that $15 million option was going to be, it started to become, well, it has to be this, it became $18 million. So that's when we decided, let's do a 9.9 and a 19.9. That just gives you an idea about where we got to the 2. There is absolutely a perfect process for us to go through to try to find the middle point in that. And I think that's where some of these questions kind of push us towards as we look at each one of those. So absolutely, we could move that in there. Quite honestly, the reason we started with a baseline of 9.9, that one literally wipes out our debt and keeps us flat on payments. So instead of just $885,000 down in our debts, it's $1.25 million down in our debts, which gets to basically flat. So it's like free money. So almost all funded by the state and what we already have in the bank. So we use that as a baseline, and anything up from there would just reduce how much we save. So that's gives you a baseline of why we put it together. So how it migrates from there, we can do anything.
My question is not so much, I understand the money part that you're talking about. My question is, if that part is not in the project, what rooms are we losing? Because I remember opening that up, was going to give us a lot more things that we're going to do.
So what happens is we have to maintain that corridor through to serve the band room. The other improvements can be made, but it leaves no room then, the space that we're now going to occupy with that corridor cut through to service the existing band chorus room means that the innovation lab has to remain downstairs. And that's what you believe. Because you're still going to renovate all those other areas beside it, but the innovation lab stays downstairs.
So the current band room would remain the current band room redone or no?
It would remain the current band room.
What's your professional opinion on the life left on that thing, because it's pretty dead?
I think you're already there. You have continual issues with that. It's really no more than a temporary structure. It's no more than a very basic metal building with a steel skin. You know, there was question, could we leave it on the same foundation, which we can't. We built a new building on top because it's too close to the other spaces around it. It doesn't meet the state minimums.
So what's your professional opinion then, as far as before the top of those walls start to rust out and the roof collapses?
Well, I think you're already seeing some of that, and, you know, I wouldn't give the building much more than a 5 or 10 year very generous life expectancy from here with a lot of considerable maintenance. And, you know, the long and the short of it is it also doesn't serve the purpose that it's being used for. It's not a good band chorus room. It doesn't have enough storage. It doesn't lay out very well. It's very tight on egress. You know, it doesn't serve the purpose that it was originally constructed as the cafeteria.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any specific items from the middle school that they have a concern about if we were looking at the overall program in proposition, you know, in scenario 2, that, you know, we've seen years of really neglect. It's been the behind the scenes. Is there anybody that's got any specific concerns about any of the stuff in scenario 2 that we would say, you know, we really wouldn't want to do?
We only have 2 options in scenario 2.
Well, you're really only talking about the 2 areas that aren't. I mean, and I think based on our walkthrough and what we've seen, I don't know, to have a truly good educational facility to allow the students to have the space and the programs they need and to make it work. I think they've made a case why it makes sense to do everything they've talked about in the middle school. That's my sense.
Definitely it's a homeschooling that makes the most scarce, without question.
It's the original, I mean, the main building we're talking about with some of this stuff, that's the original building for the school. That was it. You know, that was the item.
You can't just put any more lipstick on that thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've done additions, we've done changes, it needs a...
Seriously. So when you break out the site improvements, every detail on the site improvements?
Middle school is here. The entrance demolition, it's the relocation of the entrance.
So that's all a result of?
Yeah, so the site improvements is separated into 2 main areas. So the site improvements that are required when you place the new band chorus room.
So the effects, it happens because of the effects?
Correct. And then when we relocate the main entrance for the new secure vestibule, main office location, you know, accessible entry, and then reworking the bus and parent drop off and drive, that's all in the other site improvements. That's all, you know, part of that shift with the main office location as well as the placement of the band elevation.
Anything else on the middle school? Before we move to the hard one.
I have a question there, and I know it's probably a long answer that you may not do now, but like, one of the things I noticed when we did the walkthrough is that everything cascades. So when you start picking and choosing, I assume we're gonna run into some limitations in terms of, well, if you don't do this, then you can't do that. And, you know, so far it sounds like what's been brought forward isn't too much. Like if you don't do band, you don't move the innovation lab. Okay, not move the innovation lab might not be that big a deal, but some of these other things would be. And so, can you actually piecemeal some of these in the middle school? And if you can, how far? Or do you reach a point where you either got to do all?
The middle school, for that reason, as soon as you make the decision to move the main office, it really is a domino effect. And, you know, for my opinion, having seen the innovation lab, I really don't think that space should be in the basement. It's not very well served for that program. It's the only space in the basement that's occupied by students. The rest of the space is really service space, custodial areas, etc. So I think that really needs to be brought up with the rest of the program in the building. Much better served by windows, just better space for what they're doing with that program. I don't know if any of you have gone down and seen that. I think we didn't tour that at the day we were there. But yes, the middle school is a little difficult because everything is a domino effect. It's hard to do one thing without doing a couple of the others because everything gets backfilled as you move around the plan.
I'm just thinking, is there like a dividing line? Because really, if you start saying we're going to do all of the middle school, that's pretty much everything in scenario 2, with the exception of 2 line items, which is the expensive one, the band and chorus one. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in high school. I'm sorry. Yeah.
There are 2 things that are
There's
being...
only 2 items there, which is big.
The 2 items for the toileting, which is the toileting of the upstairs for the middle school, and expansion of one of the lower lots for parking.
Yeah, the high school, I think, lends us more to a discussion of area by area that we actually have some more flexibility.
Yeah. So we're really almost there with the middle school. Just the 2 line items, although one is quite large. But
The one's the largest, but I also think it's the worst. It's the worst. It was the original cafeteria, 30 years ago, that we now converted into a band room, and not for nothing, we've all had the ability to go and see what the productions that they're able to put out now. It's abysmal compared to what those kids are doing, and the teachers are able to put out in the space that they're doing it now, which is it's not conducive to a good educational program.
And that room's going to become a liability.
Oh, definitely. Sooner than later. Something happens during a windstorm while the building's occupied, this cost is nothing compared to what will happen. For a temporary building that's been there for a very, very long time. Yeah. So, let's move on to the high school. Yeah, go ahead. Well, actually, they've got a detail, let's look at the detail one and we can hit as we go through. This way we don't miss anything. We've got the entrance. I think that's consistent with what we've been talking about everywhere. So we want to continue down that path. So that's their security vestibule, which runs into the main office renovations, and guidance renovations in the nurse, which is that first batch of items in the cost, which would be consistent between the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school.
I think it's just a smart way to go. If we're doing it in middle school, the middle school students, I think the high school should be having the same experience. It just makes sense.
Well, and at the high school, you're also looking to take that to that next level, whether they're getting into a career program, into the job market immediately, or looking at colleges. That office is the guide to where they go, and the more resources that are there, the more guidance and helpfulness they can be in helping families plan.
And the guidance being redone affects the existing nurses station, which needs to then go to where the office is. So that's why I just think those two should just slide over to scenario 1.
Right. So then the next section on here is the locker room renovations. Want to pull that aside a second and come back to it?
No, that's not a lot.
No, he's looking at the locker room. He's looking at the expanded room. So the locker room renovations wasn't in either of the scenarios. It's not in scenario 1 or 2.
It's on the detail sheet. sheet from the presentations, but it didn't make it to either scenario.
So the areas that are, that's blue highlight, those aren't highlighted.
Okay.
Mr. Milano was referring to is,
Okay. So the blue, the detail sheet we got, the blue items aren't in any scenario.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was hard to read. The security main office, the nurses suite, all are intertwined into the work. So then you've got the athletic, which is the back, you're talking about that back hallway.
Correct. The back hallway, which is, bringing the AV down, the expansion to the fitness area, the expansion of the training room, and then the large-scale multi-purpose lecture.
Now, does this cost include, and I'm just trying to, is it just the construction or outfitting? Is it the whole?
If you'll notice, we do have some line items for furnishings and equipment for office areas, also for some of the equipment for the fitness room.
Okay.
And that's for that part of the school, meaning like you talked about track and turf, that's separate, is that in the site improvements?
That's under site improvements, right?
So what is the main expense we're talking about?
So for this renovation,
Yeah.
so you're actually kind of demolishing all of that area and re-demising it into the floor plan that's been laid out for that.
So the fitness.
So the fitness actually expands, different flooring, it has, the doors to the exterior. We're creating a new corridor through from the gym to the exterior. We're bringing the AD down, along with preserving some of the storage that's there for the athletic equipment, the football uniforms, et cetera.
The large classroom.
Yeah, and then the large multi-purpose classroom. And then expanding the trainers area, and providing some appropriate outfits for the trainers.
it's really, to some extent, the net effect of that multi-purpose classroom that can be used
By anybody in the building, but the expanded fitness center, that really does create two additional physical fitness stations that can be used at any time. That with a true fitness center as opposed to just a weight room. That's a physical education center, we list it as athletic, but that's really a physical education center that will also be used by our athletes. Well, that was part of the reason we're going with cardio stuff, so that we can incorporate more into PE, rather than have a Wii room. You actually have something that's cardio equipment and also set machines in addition to the free weights that are there, because it's primarily free weights right now.
Well, the weed room was put in for special education. The life skills class that came back, that's why that room was put there, Frank.
Well, I know that my daughter used to use that for gym, and I used to tell her, what kind of exercise are you really getting out of that?
They were dancing and they were using it. Again,
So, the broadcast studio is not there. Art room renovations, the music renovations. So the cafeteria.
Is that, the cafeteria, one question, I know you said that including the site work outside, but does that number, the 66356, does that include modifying the existing perimeter wall to
Yes.
include glass and doors?
And also removing the Q wall that divides off the current Q lines itself as well. Yes.
So on the cafeteria renovations, cafeteria personally, I don't think it's all that bad, but that also doesn't include the outside area we're talking about.
It does not include the outside area. That's under
Other site recommendations,
other site
350,000.
recommendations.
So really, if we look at cafeteria, we can tack another 350 on there technically and say that if we're gonna do the cafeteria, it's gonna cost us $1 million to do outside renovations and inside renovations.
Yes. Part of that's serving equipment as well as some furnishings, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to updating some of these stuff in the cafeteria, but as far as the overall renovation on the cafeteria, I really, I can't go for the full blown cafeteria. That's all.
Yeah, I'd like to see what it would be without changing the perimeter wall and doing the exterior work. I think that's kind of like it's a little bit of fluff. It's a luxury. Yeah, it's more luxury. I think the room itself, interior work.
You could very easily take the exterior work and just zero out that line. That's under the other site improvements.
I think we're also talking about, okay to take that interior wall down from the area to the service line, okay to do the grab and go, see what that grab and go is, but the whole way between the cafeteria and the auditorium would stay as is. If you put something inside it, that's fine, but not messing with the current wall. And I mean, that we're looking to see what that would change on those costs, and the others are a line item, so the other we don't have to worry about. The others are separate.
Exterior wall and
Right.
Yeah, well, I didn't catch the answer.
I'm sorry. The exterior, I just want to make it clear, the exterior walls, all the wall work, including the exterior wall, is including that 663, right?
Correct. And by exterior, you mean the ones facing the parking lot?
Yeah.
Okay, so you do have those.
And I think that should come out.
Yeah, I think that's, again, another luxury. I mean, there's some decent sized windows and boards. Yeah, looking to cut somewhere. And there's some people who will say, you're talking about a high school that don't have time to eat. How many people are going to sit around and enjoy the new dining experience? I don't know. I don't have anybody in high school that don't have the experience, but it's just something to consider when we're thinking about this. How much is it really going to get used in the way you have to design?
I think that's
Elizabeth, sure, if you want to try to answer that.
And I can tell you when the weather gets warmer, everyone's outside, there's almost no one inside the cafeteria.
So you're saying the outside is like...
I don't like the windows. I think that that's a safety thing. And I think it's extra. But I do like the outdoor thing, but I also agree that that is also extra. It's not something that we need.
And I think last time we spoke, something about maybe some sort of blinds
Yeah,
that come
we
down.
have such a hard time trying to do lockdown drills. We have study halls in the cafeteria every single period, and then lunch periods also. We can't do a lockdown drill in there because we have so many open windows and curtains that don't even go down. They don't even go down all the way.
I look at that as a more serious thing than spending money opening that wall up and putting exterior stuff. I'd look more into that.
And certainly that could be removed from the programs. It was, kind of meant to, the students do use the outdoor area, especially in the good weather. Try to expand that for use by more students. It's a fairly small area right now, given the population of the students and the population at each lunch, to try to expand that offering for them.
Yeah, I guess, really broken down, what are those expenses per se exactly? Was it 100,000, was it 350,000 to do that work? I'll just take out separately, see what it is.
We had earmarked, because what we're also trying to do is segregate it from the traffic line. So we had earmarked 350,000 to expand that outdoor area and then situate low seating walls to provide separation from traffic along with some bollards. Again, we don't want any interaction from the outdoor area with the line of traffic that goes around the building, and then some seating areas, some of those areas being covered. Some of those areas might just be an open, like shaded trellis area to provide, again, different opportunities for students when they're outside.
I'd like to add one more consideration when you're breaking down costs. So you have in there, you take out the wall that separates the Serbian line and the other half, right? Now, if you were to add the grab and go, that would conceivably reduce the amount of people trying to get in that line, and then poses the question, do you really need the wall taken down? Or will it be more manageable with the less overflow? Or is it still a need based on the way you look?
Well, based on what I've heard, and maybe Ryan can speak to it better, but you're really providing more convenience for a lot of students that end up having to wait to go through the line if they're just getting something simple like a drink or a bag of
What I'm
chips.
saying is, sorry, I'm not making myself clear. I agree. I think the grab and go is a given. If you never put a dollar in that cafeteria, you should add a grab and go. Because if that's the case, it alleviates part of the problem of going into lunch. So with the grab and go, now I'm saying, if you're looking to cut a few costs as well, is it feasible to eliminate the removal of that wall now because you've removed the traffic, or is there still a congestion problem that we feel we want to address by removing that wall and the grab and go?
Solve it now, that's what we
And I'm not sure.
If it's the board's pleasure for us to pull back on some of the cafeteria proposals here, we are loud and clear, we can absolutely do that by pulling back on some of the items that are, maybe some of the windows, certainly the outdoor space. Opening up that indoor servery, it's partially to keep the flow of students going through, but it also is to deinstitutionalize it. Because right now, it's concrete block, come through these two doors, walk down the steel tray and walk out. It's to make it a little bit more of a nice experience for our children who spend a decent amount of time in there. But we can absolutely figure out a way to reduce the cost exposures and try to maximize some of that experience.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. Is there any way that we could maybe scale back what was proposed and do a smaller scale thing and leave that wall and maybe just
We have a food
scale
service
back?
expert in the room too that may speak to that. Brett, come up on the microphone.
And while he's walking, I'd just like to say, we're talking about breaking it down, not deciding yet. Just by breaking that down, you can look at it and then hear from people like Joe and maybe Elizabeth on just what the impact is.
There's one important thing about taking that wall down, and the students would know, and Ms. Jensen would know this as well. During the hotter months of September, May, and June, the regular temperature is fine in the cafeteria. There is actually no air conditioning in that serving area whatsoever. So when the students actually get to where they have to get the food, it's going to be anywhere from 85 to 90 degrees in that serving area. Taking down that wall would allow the AC in the cafeteria to get into that area. You remember, you have a lot of refrigeration units in that area, and that puts off heat. So there's nowhere for that heat to escape. There's no window in that area to open. So that way it's laid out right now, it's extremely hot in there, and it's extremely hot in the back of the kitchen, but
Not to mention,
kitchen, but
there is one vent. There is one vent in that wall.
yeah, there's like a couple up top, but cold air settles on the bottom, hot air rises, as everyone knows. So there's no ventilation whatsoever. We have a couple fans in there moving the hot air around. So taking down that wall would actually make it the climate while you're getting your lunch a lot better. So it's a big plus for taking that down. And you won't have to actually add AC vents in there. The actual air would just migrate into that area. So that's a big plus for taking that wall down.
And me personally, I think the interior work, what was proposed is, legitimate changes. So I'm just more concerned about that exterior wall and exterior wall.
You did mention about the employees working behind that counter too.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's extremely hot out there, so.
I just wanted to say, I believe that that's a necessity. I don't think that the tables are really a necessity. I think that that's more cosmetic. We've had the round tables with chairs for years, and now we have these tables. Why would we put the tables that we just got rid of back in the cafeteria just to cause more cluster? I don't think that that's a great idea, especially since we have so many study halls in there. We had such a problem with the chairs all the time, just everywhere, chairs. Kids would throw the chairs, so I don't think that those are such a great idea again.
It sounds like Elizabeth's saying we should
I just think that the
do
tables are
those
so pleasant.
wall improvements,
Yeah, I
open
like
that
the-
up,
I like the wall
stick with what we
improvements.
have inside.
I like the grab and go, that's such a great idea. I mean, me and my friends don't buy anything from the cafeteria anymore because we don't want lunch, we want to get a drink or something. We don't go because we don't want to wait there for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you start not doing that exterior stuff, you leave the ceiling as is, that's a $110,000 item. So if we can start, do some of those, the grab and go, take that wall down, tighten it up, and I think we probably could save quite a bit of money.
What do you think about the exterior
Yeah, the seating along
Seating
the
at this
side.
height with
Or
charges.
just gonna be-
Well, I guess the question's gonna become, now you're gonna be looking at the block wall. Because we're not changing the exterior wall. So does that,
Wherever there's block space, we would put.
yeah, but will it be usable if you're gonna sit and, you're sitting at that high counter and you're looking at the block?
Yeah, I think actually, we can still do it without the seating, but I think we're trying to build in some charging stations. So there's something that we're hearing from,
I'm
they
sure.
gather around with one outlet to find the wall. Okay.
Most of the outlets on the wall don't work.
Yeah, I don't see a problem.
And that's minimal cost too.
Yeah, it's countertop, so that's not that big a deal, it's not changing the structure.
Yeah, I mean, and I would imagine putting that seating in and not, isn't gonna be that expensive, right? Almost, you know, and really, I don't know what the preference is. Look at a block wall, or you look at a window where everybody watches you on your computer or eating while everybody watches from home. So which one's better? I
Well,
think the block
we don't-
wall, but that's your preference thing.
And we don't need furniture now, because Elizabeth says what
Well,
we
I
have is
also
good.
think if you think about everything else that's held in the cafeteria, like I was just in the cafeteria for my senior trip meeting. Imagine having a meeting in there with all those tables everywhere. The drama club, we have the stage with the set on it. We can't practice on the stage. We practice in the cafeteria. We pull the tables up. We can't push all the tables and all the chairs in the corner and then pull them all back. That's why we don't rehearse in the band room.
Right.
Football dinners.
Okay. So I think we've beat that one. The other recommended building improvements. Well, it's the interior demo, second floor toilet room, it's fixing up that office, getting the office back upstairs, renovation of the computer lab, the maker space, renovation classroom on the second floor, structural allowance, the mechanical allowance, you know, and the computer lab stations. That corner, it's a bunch of them. And then we've got the site improvements is the next big area. We've already talked about the outdoor dining area. I guess the question I had when I went through this, what's wrong with the fence?
What's wrong with
The current fence, because in here at the high school, it says demolition of turf and fencing.
This was the perimeter fencing around the track.
Right, what's wrong with the one we have?
I think we talked about.
I'm not sure if the fencing didn't somehow get, maybe middle school fencing got transcribed into the
Yeah, that may
high
have
school
been.
thought process, because I think of high school fencing is.
So, because then there's a line for 112,000 for perimeter fencing.
I'm not suspicious that might have been a middle school discussion.
Well, there was discussion about putting the shot put in other area, moving that. Could it be part of that?
I'll have to double check that, but we did talk about relocation of one of those track and fields. It was the pole vault. And that is going to require some fencing modification, but I don't think it'll be 1,600 million feet.
Okay. Yeah, so it seems like there's something in that, that was like, ooh.
Can I ask about the locker rooms, because when we did the welcome, we didn't get to actually go in them because they're occupied, but there are safety concerns by not just students, but also when you guys walk through it as well. Just curious how that is off the list and why. Just want some idea behind that, please.
$1.8 million, that's why.
It really, that was an area that had significant renovation to it a few years back when the high school renovation happened. And when we looked at the number for redoing that, which absolutely has merit, Mr. Lawler reports to us that it's one of the higher priority items that you hear from students.